ask you to do is, if you notice around the room, there are three essential questions that we have been sort of hinging everything on. And sort of everything that we've done this week, we trace back to one of these questions. And ultimately, we want to come up with an answer. Okay, we ultimately want to give that answer for everyone. We have different components, but ultimately, we want everyone to be able to sort of speak.
When I looked at that pollen under the microscope, it resolved into not being brown, dusty material, but instead a very beautiful, long band of gold and amber, and it was gorgeous. The beauty of it was only resolved to the eye when it was magnified greatly.
We're looking at nature and the symmetry and the movement of nature we see with our eyes, but we cannot get down to the resolve, the microscopic world. And it's a whole beautiful world. In this small drop of water, you have the most beautiful precision dance almost of swirling and moving and eating. Is just fantastic. To me, for some of the students who look at things and say, oh, it's yucky, this isn't. This is the most gorgeous thing I've ever seen.
The picture is of a garlic flower anther, and I chose it because I was surprised when I looked at it up close to see the texture and the structure that isn't obvious when you look at the anther without a microscope. It's not invisible, but parts of it aren't visible with the naked eye because of what our eyes are able to see. It's too small to see the structure and the texture of it.
It is an image of bacteria, and they are invisible because our eye can't pick up something that small. I chose that image because it is of Bacillus cereus. In order to make that image, I had to prepare the slide, stain it, and then I had to use the oil immersion on our microscope. And in order to do that, I had to use all that I've learned over this week and a half.
The image that I chose was of tardigrade, and mostly because I was very excited about it and I thought it would excite my students. These little water bears are incredibly endearing, and I think they're just exciting. It's in the unseen world. It's very small. I didn't even know it was there, and it's exciting because you need to use that microscope to see it. The more research I do about this water bear, who seems very fragile and small, the more fascinating they are. They are hardy little survivors, and they can live in any environment, it seems, and they can even survive space travel.
That question doesn't come up very much for adults, I guess. We sort of walk by things without questioning, you know, what is that? I wonder what's in there. To have some of the tools to do that, and to then go find some examples, it was really interesting. It kind of like brought me back to where I used to want to explore, and that's the kind of thing that we want to do with our kids, is to get them to follow up on their curiosity and explore some of these tools that really create some sort of a sense of wonder and this whole new world that's down there somewhere where we can't quite see it.
My image is of a lettuce leaf that shows a stoma. In thinking about this image, I remembered last week on very hot, humid days that my plants were drooping and wilted. The stoma would have been closed, keeping the moisture in. In thinking about the question, how do invisible entities affect the world, I realized that that's a very important part of the cell because the gas exchange is taking place. Oxygen is being given off, which all other living things benefit from, and carbon dioxide is being taken in and used up, which also is a benefit to the carbon balance in the world.
This is a magnification of pollen, and when I was looking at this, I was thinking, how does it affect the world? And basically pollen is part of pollination, and these insects step on these little flowers, and the pollen, as you can see, has these little looks like barbs that sticks onto the legs of these little creatures that gets then carried on to another plant. And that process is what is a huge part of life on Earth. Without pollination, a lot of plant life would not survive.
Is it alive? Is it decomposing? Is something feeding off it? Is it providing nutrients? Is it feeding off something else? My mind just thinks about how delicate the balance is with all the life that is in any body of water, and if there's too much of one thing, how it could upset the balance and create an unhealthy body of water. So mostly this image, even though it's so simple, brings up a lot of questions and ideas for future research.
The image I chose is pollen from an echinacea plant. I chose it because I thought it had an interesting shape and I liked the barbs that I saw on the ends. It impacts human health because pollen can cause an immune response in humans. This particular pollen may not cause an allergic reaction, but many other types of pollen do.
We also know through our work with immunology that an allergic response is not necessarily going to have to do with the physical pollen grain itself. It's going to be kind of a misguided attempt by our immune system to attack a pathogen that is pretty harmless. That would be an eosinophil type of cell that causes histamines to be released, causing inflammation and all the discomfort that, that pollen can do. So those little tiny unseen things that are aerosolized and flying around are causing a lot of human health issues.
I chose this image of a spirochete. It was from a slide that showed all three kinds of bacteria. And I chose it since we're studying Lyme disease, and Borrelia is a spirochete, and it has such an impact on human health, as we've learned. Syphilis as well as a spirochete.
I chose this Bacillus anthracis because I liked it in an artistic sense. It's been stained, which has brought out the structure. You can see the string of rods that create this ribbon effect. This photo was taken at 1000x, and without the microscope I wouldn't be able to see it. Afterward, I found out that this beautiful organism can be disease-producing and potentially deadly.
I chose it because it shows the structure of pollen, and the magnification shows the uneven nature of it, and it'd be easy for kids to understand what pollen does and how pollinators use that. But I also chose it because its impact on human health. I have never suffered from allergies until the last 5 years, so now I have more of a personal interest in how these processes work and trying to learn how our body reacts to the pollen.
I chose an image of a fruit fly to represent how human health can be impacted by a vector carrying either the parasite, bacteria, or virus and transmitting it into humans. It was interesting to learn fruit flies are used by geneticists to study human health because of their simple systems and their short reproductive cycle.
Shows bacteria that is easily seen on the light microscope with high power oil immersion. And it is a bacteria that definitely has an impact on human health. The Salmonella bacteria causes typhoid fever, and typhoid fever is important to the general human health because 17 million people are infected and about 600,000 deaths per year of typhoid fever. Most of that is in undeveloped or developing nations.